This is the 10-Minute Contrarian Podcast. This is VP. We're a solutions-based podcast, diving into the world of contrarian investing and alternative finance. You can find us hosted on the No Nonsense Forex YouTube channel, NoNonsenseForex.com, and podcast players everywhere. Episode 199 is brought to us by Bybit. There is volatility in the market, and it looks like it's going to stick around for a while. Now, investors may not love volatility, but traders do. Traders are making a lot of money off of it. And in the crypto world, if you know what you're doing, you can make a lot of money off of it. But you're going to want a broker who keeps your funds safe should anything happen. And it helps to have a broker that gives you things, bonus things, simply by being an active trader. I mean, if you had a broker that gave you things and a broker that didn't, why would you choose the former? Bybit does all this for you. Go down to the show notes, click on the link to the Bybit blog, see if it's for you. If it is, click on my affiliate link at the bottom. It does go a long way to supporting this channel and this podcast. And get yourself signed up. Get yourself into this ecosystem. Once people get in, they don't leave because they know with Bybit membership has its rewards. It is the 10-Minute Contrarian Podcast, and this episode was inspired by two things. One, what I saw this week in the world of financial media, whether it's mainstream media or on Twitter. Yeah, I still call it Twitter. I'm going to for a while. And then also a very good book I'm reading. I read a lot of books, but only a small handful of them have ever been good enough, in my opinion, or relevant enough, too, I should say, to recommend to you guys. And this is going to be one of them. Now, if you are listening to this episode weeks or months or even years into the future, we are in that special period of time. If you're listening to this years in the future, I'm sure you will be aware of this time. I'm sure it will go down in history as a time of madness and complete stupidity from the masses. It's tariff-palooza. That's what's going on. And we talked about tariffs last week. And the reaction has been even dumber than I expected. Now, the main message I wanted to put out last week is like, look, as much as you think you might know about tariffs because of that person you like and follow who also doesn't know but wants to have a strong opinion on it, you nor I really know anything about them. What we know even less of is what the people in power plan on really doing about them. You know, we all have an idea, but we're not in the room when these negotiations are going on, and our guess is as good as anyone's. The difference is the majority of people who listen to this podcast here, not all of you, but most of you, simply don't involve themselves in it. We sit back and we watch all the madness play out. But the problem is humans are going to human, and you guys are all human, and we are still going to be influenced by people we have chosen to listen to and follow. And this can absolutely screw with us when it comes to trying to make the right decision, because I think now in particular is really an important time to make intelligent decisions. We've talked ever since this podcast has been in existence about the great wealth transfer and ending up on the right side of it. And these wealth transfers are orchestrated to make sure that the least amount of people end up on that side. Now, nobody cares if you individually make it to that side, as long as the least amount of people do. That's how these things have always worked since the beginning of time. But it's getting more and more difficult to get a lot of people over to one side because of social media. You know, we can all talk to each other now. We have actual independent journalists out there who are not compromised by the company they work for. You know, they might be biased, sure, but at least they're not being told what to say. You know, back in the day, it was easy. You know, when I was growing up, there were pretty much 3 main TV channels, and they all told us the same thing. And the newspapers all echoed those things the next morning. So if there was a particular messaging you wanted to get out to the people and have them all follow suit, it was pretty easy to do. Very few people questioned it, and if they did, they came off as crackpots. But times have changed. And now you could argue there's probably too much media out there. I mean, having a choice is great. More choice is the better, right? But mass human behavior over the years is still pretty consistent. And if what I just said before is true about the great wealth transfer and the majority of people not being able to participate in it, you're still going to want to be really, really vigilant here to make sure you don't end up on the wrong side. So let's do what we can in the short time we have together to get the majority of financial information out there, removed from your overall diet. Again, you may think you already do this. I will bet you probably don't, at least not to the degree you need to. So let's go ahead and start with the obvious. We've talked about it before, and that's mainstream media. If anybody listening to this right now is still getting the majority of their news from mainstream media, I'm going to do my best not to call you a name, but I will say that you are probably very tribal, fairly lazy, and just overall not very bright. You're not very interested in the actual truth. You are interested in their version of whatever the truth is. Now, look, if we're keeping score, one side has probably done a better job of this than the other side. I mean, I know in the United States, and I never thought I'd see this, but it happened. In the span of 4 years, the majority of Americans stopped watching mainstream media, or at least stopped getting their news from it. They just got lied to too many times, and they said enough, which is surprising to me because I think most people around the world are either so biased they don't care, or in some cases, they just want to feel something. So even if they know it's not going to be the truth most of the time, at least they like the way it makes them feel, so they really don't give a shit what the truth is. I mean, that's not where we should be as a society, but I think that's where we are. But that being said, at least in the United States, they said no, and they tuned out. I think places like Canada and most of Europe has been very slow to catch up, but I think they will over time, and I think it's for the better. But just make sure you're not one of them. Regardless of what side of the political spectrum you're on, there's a mainstream media outlet out there for you. Now, you might say, well, I just watch it to see what the sentiment is so I can fade it. Yeah, okay. Maybe that's true, but I will bet that what's also true is you're just giving yourself a permission slip to watch a lot of mainstream media news. Let's be honest, please. There are so many better ways you could be spending your time. On this podcast, we are here to make lots of money and not be miserable. And you cannot accomplish this by watching mainstream media. You just can't. I don't think I need to say any more on this. To the majority of you, this was already obvious, but we have a huge cross-section of people who listen to this podcast, and that's great. And I feel like this is something everybody needs to hear. But I will wager that the majority of you don't listen to mainstream media all day. But this is a financial podcast, and everybody's here for a reason, right? I mean, we're all finance people to a degree. And I will bet that you take in a healthy diet of financial media. And we need to talk about that. Now, again, we pick on mainstream financial media here all the time because they are very easy targets. They like to be very manipulative. They like to be wrong about many things. I personally only like to watch them when the market is tanking because it's funny to watch them panic and freak out. But apart from that, you should be nowhere near these channels. Bloomberg, CNBC, BNN, whatever they have in the UK and Europe and Australia. Just remember, the majority of them skew heavy to the left, which is, I don't want political bias on my finance channels, for one, but unfortunately they are, and this is not helpful. And then they all skew extremely bullish for one very obvious reason. They're sponsors, the people who pay them their paychecks. They are sponsored mostly by financial companies and financial products. And are you going to make your sponsors happy by talking about doom and gloom in the financial world? Even if doom and gloom is coming? Of course not. They're going to drop you. These channels know where their bread is buttered, and they cater to those sponsors at every turn. And that is not in your best interest at all. But they don't give a shit. So if we're not supposed to watch these channels, where are we supposed to go? Well, where the majority of you do go. You go to social media. YouTube can be a good place. Podcasts, obviously. But the most quick and easy way, obviously, is going to be Twitter. I would wager to say that the majority of you out there not only go to Twitter, but you have a lot of financial people you follow. Now, this is way better than mainstream financial media. I will admit you can still create your own echo chamber if you want to, but again, this is a really bad idea if you want to make money. Because boy, did I call it in the last blog post I wrote. called it. You can go there now. We talked about it a bit last week. If the market sells off, and it sells off sharply, watch financial Twitter do nothing but fan the flames downward. They're going to be pissed off. They're going to be fatalists. They're going to say, oh, this is it. Some of them are going to try to be all funny and cute and make memes talking about how they had a lot of money, now they don't. You've seen all those. Because look who you have on financial Twitter. Just like mainstream media, a lot of them are dependent on a bull market and prosperity in the market. So they're going to be really pissed off if that's not what's happening. Their whole world's crumbling. The market still correlates with crypto and Bitcoin, so those people are going to be pissed off and complain about whatever is causing this drop. Even if it was the same administration that they felt saved them from government overreach, they don't care. Most gold bugs are a bunch of doomers, and so they're going to run around saying, I told you so, and look how worse this can get. People from all sides of the financial spectrum somehow come together, like Voltron, to fan the flames downward and cause huge sell-offs. And then as soon as whatever was causing this downward movement appears to go away, even if it's just temporarily, they will do the opposite and start fomenting to the upside. Don't believe me? Look at the past week. Look no further. I haven't tweeted about it. I'm like, financial Twitter has declared defeat and victory all in the span of 7 days. Nice job, guys. Clown emoji. My only regret was not stopping at one clown emoji. Should have been lots. And I should have tagged every financial Twitter account that I follow. I should have just gone scorched earth on everybody. But look, I'm not telling you anything you guys didn't already see. You saw it this week. Everybody, from crypto people to metals people to macro people to ETF people, were all like, oh my God, this is stupid. What is he doing? This is never going to work. It's going to make everything more expensive and lead to inflation. And the U.S. is going to lose all their allies. And then not even a day later, everybody's like, oh, bye. Everything's fine now. Yeah, actually, if you look at it, it was kind of a good idea, really smart. He got rid of a lot of tariffs from other countries that really shouldn't have been there in the first place. And now we can all move forward, maybe not China, but you know what? Screw China. Like the fickleness of these people really exposed their overall agenda, in my opinion. And their agenda is not to be on your side. Their agenda is not to give you the most helpful information possible. Their agenda is to keep the lights on any way they possibly can, and often at your expense. So now this is a problem, isn't it? Where can you even turn? Where can you go to get news and information that is as unbiased as possible and that can actually help you? Well, the first thing I think we need to do is to properly know how to eliminate bad information from our lives. I did this with my trading system. I was like, look, you guys have a lot of toxic ideas and information in your heads that has stuck there. And you're probably going to fight me on this, but that's fine. We need to get this out of your head first so we can rebuild you from the ground up. And so that's why I went on this anti-campaign against things like trend lines and Fibonacci and most Forex news. Because at the end of the day, what you eliminate is supremely important because it's constantly going to weigh you down and negatively affect your performance. How are you possibly going to win a race if you have a 40-pound backpack full of bricks strapped to you? It really doesn't matter what you do from here. You need to get that backpack off of you first, or else what's the point? As we always say here, win by not losing. So exactly what can we do about it? Well, I would suggest listening to another person not named VP to get some additional help here. Now that I think we understand how important it is to get a lot of this information away from our thinking, and this new book I'm reading is really great for that. It's called How Not to Invest by Barry Ritholtz. It just came out, so that means you're probably going to have to pay full price for it. But again, for $20, $25 to help get rid of so many of the things that probably have in the past affected your account negatively and are certainly still going to do that in the future if you don't do something about it. This is money very well spent. I see so many people who only look at cost and don't look at value. Even if you're broke, if you just start looking at value instead of cost, you're actually going to save a lot of money. Please trust me on this. But in this book, he goes through history and just shows how so many people, the majority of people actually, have been famously wrong on really, really big things. One of the examples was, the majority of people back in the 60s did not think the Beatles had any chance of making it in the United States. And then he continues to give a lot of really great examples throughout history, but then immediately switches into the finance world and shows how it's arguably worse, and how we just canonize these people who are wrong literally all of the time. If you're listening to this podcast on YouTube, you saw the thumbnail I put of Robert Kiyosaki, and it pains me to do it. He wrote the book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, that completely changed the overall trajectory of my life. Without that, there would be no this, and I owe him everything for that. But we can't pretend like he has been the worst predictor of pretty much everything for a very long time. Now, his solutions, gold, silver, Bitcoin, good solutions, but he goes in, the author of the book really goes heavy into doomers, which is something I did in my blog. If you want to go to the search bar on nononsenseforex.com and type in conspiracy. I wrote a blog on how people who think conspiracy theorists are always wrong are not very intelligent people, but people who believe that every conspiracy is valid and who like to be huge doomers about things are arguably worse. Because let's be honest, when's the last time the worst case scenario actually happened? According to doomers, it should have happened many times by now, but it hasn't. What was the worst thing? COVID? Something with a 99.5% survival rate? Is that the worst possible thing that's happened to us in our lives? If you're in the Western world, things are pretty good most of the time, even when they're not. But doomers talk about extreme measures that we need to take all the time, and it turns out we never really do. Somebody else I hate to pick on, ICT. If you guys have followed him on Twitter for a while, he would come out every year and say, all right, this is it, guys. You need to stock up on bottled water and ammunition and make sure you know your neighbors because something is about to happen. And then it wouldn't happen. He would delete all of his tweets and then do the exact same thing a year later. It's like, guys, what are we doing? But they keep getting publicity and they keep getting shine and they keep getting taken seriously for being wrong about a particular thing all the time. On the other side, you guys have heard me rant about Cathie Wood, St. Catherine, destroyer of capital, in one of the most prosperous periods in financial history, likely the most prosperous period in financial history, the 2020s, post-COVID. Nobody has done worse than she has. I don't know how it's even possible, but go look at any of the ARK ETFs on your chart right now. She has done nothing but wreck people, yet she gets all sorts of publicity and nobody mentions the futility. Bitcoin people are the worst. They're like, oh, Cathie Wood says Bitcoin's going here. Why does that make you excited? Lady who's wrong about everything says Bitcoin's going to the moon. Yet she keeps getting the big interviews. Now I'm giving you more extreme examples here, but the book really lays out all the archetypes of people that you should generally just probably get rid of completely. I'm likely going to start. I do like some of the information I do get from them. It can be helpful. But if I'm measuring the helpful versus the unhelpful, it can be pretty lopsided sometimes. And then in the later parts of the book, he actually tells you, devises a really good plan on how you can do this and the types of people you should be listening to because they do exist and they are quite valuable. And books like this, to me, are so much more important and so much more relevant than almost every investing book out there in existence. I mean, break it down. Most people are skewed one way or another by this information. The majority of this information is wrong. And I don't care what anybody out there says, the majority of you do not have what it takes to simply take this information and blindly fade it. So it's best you just eliminate it altogether. And I think this book does a very good job of showing you how. And it should be widely available in paperback, on Amazon. I'm reading it on Google Books. So if you're looking for a good book, definitely check that one out. But overall, my recommendation as to what you should be looking for, as opposed to what you should be looking to avoid. Because eliminating a bunch of things is great, but once you've done that, now you're not left with a whole lot. So here's what I think you really should be looking for. Number one, facts. Like actual facts. Not some opinion from a source you like because you agree with them. Facts, things that actually happened, things that can be documented, whether it's numbers or with an actual document or something somebody actually said that's not ambiguous. If you can hone in on these things, you are so much further ahead than almost everybody. But you first have to surround yourself with people who are prone to give you more facts than rhetoric or emotion or punditry. Now, there will be very few places out there that will give you this without the things you don't want, because everybody is biased in some way. But do your best here. You should be able to know what to look for. Second, something that we all share here, and what is the best gauge of human behavior on Earth? Price charts. That's what technical analysis is. It's the documenting of human behavior over time and being able to determine patterns that repeat over and over, regardless of what the situations are. This is a superpower, and most people do not use it because they don't know how. And the people, on top of that, the people that do know how are generally zoomed in way too close. Look at the people who post charts on Twitter. Do they post them monthly? Hardly ever. And if they ever do, they're just doing it to prove a point about the long-term history of something. They're probably not using it the way we are, where we are looking for entry and exit signals. Contrarians, never let anything that's going on in the world go against your charts. There will always be things in the world that will try and prevent you from going the direction your charts want you to go. And your charts are going to be wrong sometimes, but you just have to go with them anyway. Because you know, as well as I know, they're going to be right more often than they are wrong. And trends in the market, up and down, can last a very long time. And if you are on those trends, then it really doesn't matter how many times you had small losses along the way. Just like in Forex trading, it's no different. But overall, remember what I said last week. You want to be the emperor, not the peasants. The peasants are the ones who flip out over everything. The peasants are the ones who think they understand tariffs and their effects and know exactly where this world is going to go, up or down, depending on the current administrations. This is absolute peasant behavior. We sit back. We take the factual information we have in front of us, and we make our decisions that way. And occasionally we take some time out to laugh at the peasants. We laugh at the people we used to be. Back when our trading and our investing was frustrating and not prosperous because we kept letting all this bullshit weigh us down because we simply didn't know how to filter it out. But now hopefully you do, or you know how to do it more or with better efficiency. And you understand the importance of doing this. I'm going to leave you with a quote that was in the book. This is from Howard Marks. Now, if you don't know who Howard Marks is, very famous investor, anytime he says something, you should probably listen. He's like one of those guys. And he says, and I quote, "Being right may be a necessary condition for investment success, but it won't be sufficient. You must be more right than others, which by definition means your thinking has to be different." End quote. If you are ever going to be able to separate yourself away from the people who either don't win or simply tread water, you must think differently. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been an episode of the 10-Minute Contrarian Podcast, and I'm glad you're here, because we are certainly not crazy. We just think differently.